That's okay. We're just going to talk about this real quick. Okay, so question 270 here says that there are several ways to write the dimensions of the rectangle to the right. So this up here was just talking about there's maybe sometimes only one way to do something, and then there's other times there are multiple ways. So here we have multiple.
So one thing that I noticed right off the bat is on the projector here, there's a lot of text. And while I can't read it, I still feel like a lot of the students in the room are kind of disengaged because it seems like there's a lot of text, like I said, and it's really hard to follow. I think just me as a person looking at this, much less a student, it's hard to follow somebody's, when they're trying to explain something, if you're looking at so much information on the board, because I feel like your mind just sort of bounces all over the place. Maybe if it was a little bit more simplified, that the students would look at it and actually be internalizing some of it. I think when you see that much going on a projector, you're just like, you don't want to engage.
Ways to write these dimensions. Do you guys remember on Friday when we talked about adding on a movie theater and a game room to a house, and they gave us an area of like 160, and we had to come up with all the dimensions? Yeah. Okay, so that's what we're basically going to be doing today, just with a more concrete example, I guess. So this question A says, how many ways can you write the dimensions of the generic rectangle at right? Draw a new rectangle for each way. So take a look up here. Do you see this right here? Look up here, guys, on the board. See how this is rotated from here? We want you to draw them in your notebook just like this.
Okay, I just want to, one more time, I think that another thing is that if there's this much text going on the projector and then she's giving these different instructions, maybe she could have broken it down a little bit, like broken down all of that text into separate slides or pieces of information, because I feel like once again these students are kind of getting overloaded with information and they're not really paying, like a few of them have stakes in this lesson, but the others are kind of, they seem a little disengaged. And it might be due to the fact that this just seems like a lot of information.
Okay, your page is going to look like this. Not like that. Like this. Okay, just draw a whole bunch of them on your notebooks. And then what you're going to do is you're going to work with your teams to figure out what those dimensions are. Okay?
Okay, so I have one thing that I do like about this lesson, and then one thing I would kind of change. I think it's great that these groups of students are set up in a way where they can work together. I think a lot of times that's really undervalued because I know that a lot of times for me, when I was going through school, that working with peers when the lesson was engaging and I had invested myself in it, I learned a lot more than if I was working on my own. And especially for me in regard to math. But the second thing that I noticed was so this projector slide where we have this information, she's trying to get the students to copy this down in their notebooks. I think that in my experience, when I'm trying to get students, I'm modeling something for my students, if I put up a finished product, it makes it harder for my students to understand what we're doing together, or sometimes they get confused because they see the finished product but not the steps. So one of the things that I use, and I don't know this teacher's access to technology, but I don't know if you could use a video. I use a document camera many times, and I will just walk them through the whole process once together. Like we'll all do it together, and I'll physically be doing it through the document camera for the students. And I think that sometimes that modeling really benefits students.
So you're just going to copy these down in your notebook and then come up with all the possible ways, all the possible dimensions. Yeah, no? Yep. So take a second, copy these down in your notebook, okay? Start doing that right now. Huh? Yes. So start copying these down, okay? And then with your teams, you're just going to find those dimensions. Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Okay, so
I also want to mention that I think it would be interesting to, now that I'm watching these, to analyze myself more in the classroom, because I'm definitely guilty of it. But I think a lot of times we don't think about how we come across, and the language here, like when she keeps telling them the same thing over and over again and they're disengaged, it seems like she's grasping at straws, but she's not, I don't feel like she's giving them any way to be invested in the lesson. I feel like she's just giving them the same instruction over and over again, like, okay guys, we got to do this, okay guys, you got to copy it down, and then it starts to sound like a parent, and I kind of wonder if they're just like, well, tuned out, because it sounds like they're being not punished, but it's coming from a pedestal type place, like, okay guys, you need to do this, and I feel like that might be another reason they're kind of tuned out.
Okay, so if you did not finish your homework,
This is for tonight, yeah. So if you didn't do it Friday, then you have to do it tonight.
One of the other things that I see is that I feel like this lesson, and once again, I'm coming from an English teacher's perspective. So I have never taught a math class, but I do think that when you're talking about dimensions and things like that, that they are applicable to the real world. And I think that maybe it would lead or open a door for some differentiation here, or allow these students a way to get more invested in this lesson if they were all presented with a different real world situation, or if they were at least given something tangible or something they could manipulate on their desks, something to get them more involved. Because right now, like, and I said, I can't see, that's one of the things you can't see, like what these students have in front of them specifically, but it seems like they're just copying this down on a piece of paper, and then I feel like it becomes pretty rote. Like, it's like, okay, we're going to just copy this down and move on. And it doesn't become something that they can actually discuss or talk about how it applies in real life, or they can't make those associations. They can't make those relationships with the data.
So get these copied down in your notebooks. What are you looking for? A pencil? For what? Oh, yeah. Where to put it? Yeah, I just, it's one right here. Right, so get these copied down and start talking with your groups about the dimensions.
So, like, one of the very last things that I want to mention is, and it still kind of goes on this way for a few seconds or so, instead of talking to these students individually or looking at their work and visiting with each group, which I'm not saying, I know that she had somebody that she was talking to and things like that, but I feel like it's very important that you are not just looking for raised hands, that you are kind of interacting with these students and seeing what they're doing in order to assess them, and not just to assess them, to support them in the learning. But I do feel like that's a way that I gain information about where my students are. And I feel like if I was just walking around, and once again, it's that, okay guys, you need to get to work kind of thing, instead of, hey, let me see how this is going. Like, let me get on your level here and figure this out with you and see where we're all at together and who needs support and who's emerging as somebody who really understands this aspect of the class, that extensive and inside knowledge, as opposed to, so the intensive knowledge, as opposed to extensive knowledge. So if, somebody's emerging as a leader, well, then I would take note of that, so that in the future, I could say, okay, like, this person knows a lot about this, and let them, so I could match up my groups in the future in a way where collaboration would be more beneficial for everyone in the room. Overall, though, I think it's a good idea. I think that the lesson is a good idea. It has a lot of good bones. There's just a few things that I would change that I think would make it really stand out and give these students a little bit more of an opportunity to be engaged.